Thank you for giving me the privilege of your company and joining me again for another Southern Report and continuing in my political series of having the absolute pleasure to interview another Reform UK candidate. And I am going to be interviewing the candidate for Oxford West and Abingdon. And I'm going to introduce you to him now. Sir, James Gunn, thank you very much for joining me on the Sutherland Report. It's lovely to meet you via the digital media. So thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you for having me. It's a good opportunity to have a professional video done that I can send to my constituents.
That's extremely kind of you, James, and I'm going to work hard to do that for you. So let's start off with our usual geography lesson, so we can place the constituency where you are the prospective parliamentary candidate for Reform UK. So yes. We'll do that. So here we are on the map I regularly use about the UK. So before we go into the finer point of where you are, where would you say the constituency is on there?
Well, it's rather below, it's south of Sheffield, almost straight down the M1 and the A43. And it's about the same latitude as the sort of north of Pembrokeshire.
Okay,
so
brilliant.
That bit's sticking out of Wales. And so it's about 40 miles northwest of London. Okay. Sorry, I'm an ex-Navy, so I do points to the compass.
No, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. It's good to see that you're putting those wonderful skills you learned as a youngster in extremely good practice. So here you are. Yep. This is the area. And
that's the county of Oxfordshire, yes.
Yeah.
And so we've got several constituencies in there. And I think you're going to show a map more detail. That's right. So Oxford West and Abingdon, you can see you've got Oxford East, that is that little one. And then a number of other constituencies: Witney, Wantage and Didcot, Banbury, and Henley and Wantage. I'm not sure quite if that's right. Bicester and Woodstock as well. So, thank you.
No, well, not at all. Thank you, James. It's an area that I do know fairly well, and it's also a very beautiful. It's also a very beautiful area. So, James, why are you stepping forward as a wonderful citizen of this country to then stand for Reform UK? What is your motivation for doing so?
Yes, I've been voting for the least awful candidate for the last 25 years. Since 1997, I haven't wanted any of the leaders to be Prime Minister. I felt they're not working for the British public anymore. I felt they've got their own ideas and they're taking it in their direction, and they humour us for a few weeks either side of a general election, mostly before it, and then once they've got into Parliament, they carry on talking to themselves and doing what they want to do. That's the first part of it. The second part is it's become increasingly difficult to tell the difference between two major parts, and even Liberal Democrats, they all seem to be going in roughly the same direction. And I felt that it's too much government, too much tax, too much bossiness, and we need a country where Britain is free, where people can be themselves, where people can, start businesses and thrive, and not be bullied by the government all the time. So why reform? Well, I went to a few events run by various parties, and I found people like me in the Reform Party. So they were kind enough to ask me to apply for a candidate. So that's what I did. And I applied about 2 or 3 years ago and was appointed as the PPC, the prospective parliamentary candidate, back in last October. And that was a nice recognition. And hopefully on Friday, I shall be nominated as the parliamentary candidate when my deposit is paid, all the paperwork's done. So that's exciting. I'm launching a business at the moment, so I'd like to have started earlier, but we're here. And so Nigel and me are starting our campaign more or less at the same time.
And you are, of course, referring to Nigel
No,
Farage,
yeah, of course. Sorry.
now
Yes.
the leader of Reform UK.
Yeah.
James, thank you. So, what are the concerns of you? You know, the area that you're living there. What are the concerns that the constituents have, that the people living in the constituency have? What are the
Yes.
conversations that you are having?
Well, it's Oxford, West, and Abingdon. I mean, these constituencies are supposed to be made up of people with similar interests, but Oxford, West, and Abingdon probably they haven't got a good homogeneity, if you like, of the constituents. So the university obviously employs a lot of people in the sort of Oxford West. There are some in Abingdon, obviously, but Abingdon is a very old town. It has quite a lot of the town is built around the Abbey and its gardens, and Abingdon was in fact a county town of Berkshire until 1972. So you know, they're both on the Thames, so wiggles through my constituency very wiggly, and of course everybody's familiar with the sort of colleges and the punts and the bridges and so forth. By the time it gets to Abingdon, it's becoming a bit of a waterway and a big thing. So, and Abingdon's got a large employer in the form of Miele, and lots of other smaller businesses. So the interests aren't quite the same. People aren't raising the same things with me in Abingdon as they are in Oxford West. However, what are the main issues? A lot of people find the flooding is a problem. I live on the banks of the River Rock and the River Thames, so unfortunately I'm on the second floor, so I don't get too wet. But I did have a week in the beginning of January when I couldn't get in and out. So, but that affects many of the constituents in the lower lying parts of Oxford and Abingdon, and it's been a long-standing problem. I've lived here since 2005, and it was a problem then. In fact, I think about 2 years before I arrived, Abingdon Road was in Oxford was 2 feet underwater. The other thing is traffic flow. It's very difficult with 600-year-old colleges to kind of move buildings, and it's just never going to happen. So the roads are narrow, they are winding, and they're not designed for cars. But so it's very difficult to find a solution to that. And obviously more and more people want to cycle, and there's less and less room. There's not much room for cycle lanes in certain parts of the town. So traffic flow is difficult. I also probably people don't realise that the Thames separates into several streams around here, and there's also the canals and railways. So down the west of Oxford, it's difficult. So I'm sympathetic to the traffic engineers, but it's always been a problem. But we have compounded the problem with a local traffic neighbourhood now, and we didn't need to do that to ourselves. That's a real shot in the foot. And I know there was a march of I think about 100,000 people in Oxford this time last year. But the council have pressed ahead anyway. They did lose the relevant seats, but there's quite a response to the local traffic neighbourhood, and those are the things that are specific to Oxford. But people are definitely raising with me the cost of living. Beg your pardon, another Oxford issue particularly is the cost of housing. Oxford is as expensive as Mayfair or Piccadilly, in terms of the cost of a building versus the average salary cost of a home. So it's incredibly expensive. And then there's as I said, there's the national issues of overwhelmed public services not delivering, and the cost of living, the cost of energy, and these are all exaggerated by the mass immigration, and people feel that our wishes are being ignored, and that our culture and our traditions are under attack, and we can't have intifadas in the streets in this country. We're just that's just not the British way, is it? Sorry, I don't want to be pompous, but burning flags and spitting at people and beating people up for their views is not how we do it.
James, thank you for that. I just wondered, could you expand on? You were talking about the traffic management, but
Yes,
I am aware of some of the things that have been going on Oxford. Basically, what the whole thing of banning cars, etc., the impeding on businesses. Could you expand on that? Explain that and
yes,
how that's been affecting people.
yes. We unfortunately, a lot of people didn't vote in the council elections last time around, and that means that we've got some of the more extreme people are in. So we've got a Liberal Democrat, Labour, and Green council, and that's pretty unusual. Normally, Oxfordshire County Council is pretty solidly Conservative. Unfortunately, the Conservative vote didn't turn out, as an expression of national disgust, no doubt. And so we are now lumbered with this local traffic neighbourhood thing, which, if you can't take your car in, if your commute was 15 minutes and it's now 45 minutes, if you've got 20-mile-per-hour limits and cycle lanes everywhere on main arteries of Oxford, then people will just simply take their business elsewhere. And you only have to go into the covered market in the centre of Oxford, which is a very old set of, well, it's somewhere between shops and stalls, but it's quite a feature of Oxford city centre. You can see that the shops are steadily shutting. As their lease comes up for renewal, they're not renewing. And this is just going to continue around Oxford. It's already had a lot of shops shut in Cornmarket, and you can see that the colleges which own a lot of these properties are now converting them into student accommodation, because they can make more money from the colleges, from the accommodation, than they can from the shops. So they are that local traffic neighbourhood is gutting the economy of Oxford. It's very sad.
And of course, then I mean, I know it well, having filmed in there, but it means it just takes the atmosphere away, doesn't it? It takes this heritage away, and of course, as those businesses then they're going, that then naturally has a huge effect centrally.
Yes.
So I'm very sorry to hear that people didn't come out and vote. So James, do you think that is one of the biggest challenges you've got there, to get people to come out and vote in regard to the general election that will be happening on the 4th of July?
Well, obviously, general election turnouts are rather better, but after all Sadiq Khan's done, he's still got re-elected in London. So I do urge the electorate that now is the time to get off the sofa and start voting for something new. Now that you have an option to vote for something new, and it's not just the old legacy parties, as I'm calling them, please come out and vote. If you're one of the people sitting on the sofa and saying, I plague on all their houses, sorry, I'm not the same house as them. I'm different, and so are the rest of the party. So please come out and vote if you're one of those people who is totally disillusioned with the system.
And I tell you what, this would be a really good moment to actually say, how can people reach you? How can they contact you? Email, social media, etc. If you could explain that to the audience now, and then we'll segue into something else.
Okay. Well, it's quite easy to find my biography page on the Reform Party website, reformparty.uk, and if you click on Find My PPC, then you'll be able to find me under the South East region, under the Oxfordshire section, and constituencies Oxford West and Abingdon. My email is oxfordwestandabingdon@reformuk.com. So constituency name @reformuk.com. That's easy to remember. Or you can also, if you join the party, then you will find yourself on the sort of constituency email list, and I will be able to reach you easily then. So that you can also, I will give you my GoFundMe link if you wish, Mark, and you put that in the description too. So if we put those two things, then then there's a Reform Oxford Facebook page, which where we're beginning to post some social media for people to look at.
Fantastic, and I look forward to this interview being on there as well. So it's
Of course,
fantastic.
yes.
James, so what is the campaign strategy that you've got? Have you got any hustings lined up? Have you been given those
Yes, I have a
opportunities?
number of hustings, actually.
Right.
Yes. The churches in Oxford are running an event in St Andrew's Church on the Wednesday. This all should be in my diary, shouldn't it? But in my mental diary. So Wednesday, is it the 19th? And I have a churches in Abingdon event on the 19th of June. Blavatnik School of Government is running one on the, or trying to organise one on the Monday. Then I have been invited to Headington School for Girls on the 1st of, about 2-3 days before the election. I'm not sure whether that event is confirmed yet, and a similar one at Matthew Arnold School in Oxford. So lots of hustings being organised, and obviously these organisations have traditionally run these events. So obviously we'll be putting leaflets around as many houses as we can reach, and I'm delighted that I've had this opportunity to get myself a professional video. So we'll be putting things like that on social media.
Thank you, and I'm delighted that you've joined me. And the thing, James, leaflets, hustings, people can reach you if they want to help you, to get to volunteer to help you. They can reach you via the email and the other social media.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
And any help I know that you would appreciate. So just to clarify a few things, and you've raised the important things about the traffic management, what that is actually doing to the centre of Oxford and changing its appearance, where you've said businesses sadly have been put out of business. The Oxford, the actual universities are then, those buildings that people rent off them are then converting them into student accommodation. So it seems that the heart is being removed there. Are people able to?
Well, it's turning it into almost into a university campus.
Right.
But that's not necessarily a bad thing. But it's a financial disaster for all the families whose businesses have to close and the employees and things. And there's no reason for it to come back. That's the thing. The council think you can do a 6-month trial and then say, "Oh, right, so you can all come back now. We've decided it was a disaster." But then you're going to lose the business rates as well. So, what are these people thinking? It's ideology over practicality.
I hear you. And what if, are the business rates, are they too expensive? Is this another thing that's contribution?
I think business rates are very high. The reason for that is quite simple. The business rates are easier to raise than you have fewer votes involved than there are in income tax. So, politics and the Treasury get very cynical about things like that. So that's why they're not necessarily taxed at a fair rate. And of course, most people aren't aware how high they can be and how unfair they are, and also how it disadvantages a high street business versus an online business, such as Amazon. So reform intends to change business rates dramatically and replace it with a 4% delivery tax on online businesses. So that will be really good news for small businesses in the high street. We want to preserve the character of Britain.
Because footfall is important. Because if there aren't the businesses there for people to walk to and engage, and then, as I think you would really quite rightly say, and particularly in Oxford, because you have got the universities, and the universities are, full of young people with all the hustle and the bustle and the enjoyment of that. And that it is invigorating. It's invigorating to be out and within that atmosphere. That if you begin to change that, we are then seeing the heart of a very, very important cultural city to our nation then change. James,
and the coffee shops closed, the restaurants closed, all that stuff is more business lost. And if there's nothing for people to do, they'll just say, well, actually, are there other universities we could go to where it's a bit more fun?
No.
The council are not thinking it through, looking very far ahead, and they're assuming that everyone will just go along with what they say.
Mm.
Well, they won't. They'll change their life. They'll adapt.
Right. Within your constituency, I think maybe the answer is no, but I'd like to know, but definitely in the surrounding area. I mean, you
Yes.
are surrounded by farmland, aren't you?
Oxfordshire is very much an agricultural area. Apart from the universities, you've got Formula One and agriculture in Oxfordshire, and Formula One and rally. Motorsport is a huge industry in Oxfordshire. So the two universities also very big, but yeah, most of it's farming.
Observing from your constituency, what's the situation that the farmers find themselves in? Are you seeing that?
Well,
because
in
of the
fairness,
whole, sorry.
Most of my constituency is suburban, urban, rather than rural. I mean, I do have a number of villages in it, but some of them have been moved into other constituencies. I used to have Woodstock, but that's kind of moved into Bicester and Woodstock now. So less and less of my constituency is farming now, but farmers are under a lot of pressure, and we in Reform are incredibly sympathetic. The European subsidies stopped obviously at Brexit, but the government turned off subsidies in 2021. So there've been big changes and more pressure on farmers to do green things rather than to produce food, and eventually we still need to eat. And if we're importing everything, then it's only going to be more expensive than if we're growing it. And also, British food is probably of the highest quality in the world, or it's right up there with everything else. I think American food standards are pretty frightening. And I noticed that the Europeans have started putting animal protein back into cattle feed and sheep feed. We all took it out because of CJD. I don't understand why they're doing that again. This kind of thing, if we are being mandated to eat this stuff, it's not going to do us any good.
No, I hear you. And one of the reasons I'm asking the question, and as you quite rightly say about the makeup of your constituency, that about the pressure that farmers are under. So within the farmland, is there a number of fields with solar panels on that they're being turned over?
There are some big solar farms. But this is, as I say, those are generally a bit further out, and I haven't got them in my constituency. A lot of my constituents work at science parks. Milton is the biggest science park in Europe, and Harwell is also very big. So it's a commute down the A34 there, about 5-10 miles, and so there's lots of really high value work going on there, which is very profitable. But again, the A34, I just don't go near it on a Friday if I can avoid it. From lunchtime onwards, it's a a zoo.
So are you then, and without wanting to put words in your mouth, because of the other discussions I'm having with other people and also an overview of the country. So infrastructure, when you're talking about roads, are we talking pothole issues?
Oh, definitely. Yes. Right. I mean, roads have not been maintained. I remember as a boy or as a young driver, I never had to think about, was there a pothole coming? But now when I drive out into Oxfordshire to my mother's home, I'm dodging the potholes everywhere you go. It's like driving in Africa or something. So yes, we've got a pothole problem like anyone else. But I mean, this goes back a long time. Gordon Brown took all the money away from anything which didn't have an immediate impact on schools and hospitals, and it's never been put back.
That's a very
so we've been neglecting the roads for 20 years.
So James, what about, you may have touched this at the beginning, I do apologize, but is there that conversation of not being able to get an appointment at the doctor's surgery? Is there a strain in
the health service waiting lists are as bad here as everywhere? And I think Reform's got some very interesting proposals here. Basically, Dr. David Bull, he's a part-time GP when he's not presenting on the radio. He's the what's called co-deputy leader. So we've got two leaders, him and Ben Habib. But David is our health spokesman, and he has put together a team which have come up with this policy. He originally proposed about 2 or 3 years ago the idea of using pharmacists for things, and that's been adopted by the government, and they've said it's their idea. But what we will do, if after the election we are the government, the health service will have to provide you with a GP appointment within 3 days or pay for a private one. If you don't get a specialist appointment within, I think it's 3 weeks, then the NHS will have to pay for that appointment, a private appointment. And if you don't get the operation within 3 months, then the NHS will have to pay for that too. So I think that's a really interesting sort of catalytic method for reforming the health service, just by from the bottom up, and the health service will have to shape up. Obviously, we're going to have to train more doctors in the long term, but you can't just wave a wand and complete an 11-year training for a doctor. But I don't think it's morally right for us to be stripping the Philippines and parts of Africa of the few doctors they can afford to train, just to keep us, happy in our health service. We need to train enough doctors.
I hear you.
And other clinicians, it's all the professionals, and we need a lot less NHS administrators. I imagine it just seems to be over administered to me. And after 30 years in management consulting, you quickly get the feeling for a place when you're in there.
Thank you for saying that about over middle management. Then we're talking about over management. How do you view, having recently had the council elections there, how do you view the council and the efficiency of that in your area? Because as you've said, that you've got the Greens in there, you've got Labour in there, and the Liberal Democrats. It's interesting to see if I think they're all on the same page.
They're all working towards the 15-minute city, the local traffic neighbourhood, as the government wants us to call it. But it's the Great Reset 15-minute city they're really thinking about. People who know these individuals tell me that they believe in it. They're going after the green vision of a 15-minute city, which means we won't be allowed to drive places. We won't be allowed to use carbon fuels. We won't, it's not a question of whether we think it's a good idea or not. We just won't be allowed to.
Right. And if you then win the seat, what are you able to do to challenge that, to then challenge council waste? I mean, is there efficiencies that could be made there from your point of view?
Let me come back to you on that, because I've recently become aware of a thing called Colchester Council Watch, which is a YouTube channel, which is a model I'd like to copy in Oxfordshire. And we do have a rather unusual set of councils in that we've got one of every kind, and the overlaps are pretty terrible. But anyway, and basically Colchester Council Watch send ordinary people, citizens, whatever, to go along to council meetings and to find out what's going on and actually ask the council questions. And in this way, they were able to convince Colchester Council that they weren't doing their business legally. They hadn't done the consultation properly. They hadn't done their safety assessments. They hadn't done their sustainability assessments and their, for example, the food sustainability risk and things like this. So as a result, Colchester does not have a local traffic neighbourhood anymore. So that's been highly effective, and I would like to see more of that. It's quite clear that Oxford Council hasn't done its consultation lawfully, properly on this LTN scheme, and perhaps we should have done a judicial review, but we weren't organised enough.
Well, that sounds an extremely good strategy, James. So we've talked about the changing in the Oxford itself within the city, and how the universities are using that situation. Businesses sadly going. You've described this beautiful area, and also the concerns, infrastructure in regard to doctors' appointments, hospitals, etc. James, is there any other concerns that your constituents are bringing to you right now?
Yep. It is the major ones. It is the cost of living. It is the mass immigration. It's the NHS waiting lists. It's the cost of energy. But I think there's just a general feeling of nothing works, and it used to work. So why is it all going wrong? And I find it hard to believe it's just underfunding. That's, as a management consultant, you can always do the same with less, I find, if you put your mind to it. And we are fabulously unproductive as a country. If you look at the kind of revenue per hourly, per worker kind of thing, we are really right down the bottom of all the leagues. And we should be better. And we must be better, because otherwise we can't afford to sustain our society. Indeed, we can't, because we're printing money to carry on our lifestyle. That just means we're giving the bill to our grandchildren.
Well, there's a phrase that's come up. The phrase that's come up about, moving from a wealth distributor to a wealth creation, and you have mentioned the science parks in Oxford, which is very well known for. So we need this innovation. Is that what you're saying within?
Well, we certainly need much more economic growth, and those companies are capable of providing, are capable of being scaled up into a global business if you take their technology and take it global, worldwide. Our tax system, our pension fund system and things don't make that easy, because pension funds are not allowed to invest in high growth companies. You have to go into sort of private equity for that. And because of the tax differences compared to the States or Japan or Hong Kong or whatever, less so Hong Kong, that's more communist now, isn't it? But say Singapore and Dubai, if you want to get the amount of money that it takes not to complete a technology, that's a few million, but if you want 100 million or more to take a product worldwide, then that's got to be big money, and we don't have enough people willing to risk billions, hundreds of billions, to take these wonderful products worldwide. Which is why so many of our exciting companies are owned by foreign investors. There used to be Germans, Japanese, and Americans, and now it also includes Indians and Chinese companies. Think of a global success that we have in this country, and with the exception of Rolls-Royce and a few banks, a couple of oil companies, how has the FTSE 100 changed in the last 30, 40 years? If you go and look at the American equivalent, the Dow Jones, only General Electric have been in it for more than 25, 30 years. And in the NASDAQ, you've got a thing almost as big as Wall Street, with dozens of enormous companies. Why isn't Britain doing that when we're having all the ideas? When you look at Apple, for example, that's a British guy doing the design. Peter Ives is the name, can't remember, but why is it easier to do it in California than here? And we need to make it so, make it different.
No, I hear you extremely loudly on that one, especially with our heritage across this great nation. We have
there's YouTube channels about Britain's contribution to the world, and it's not just science and technology; it's also law and constitutional things. We seem to be forgetting all these things. We're the people that invented the limited company, which is just such an amazing piece of commercial genius, which sort of separates people's, distributes risk amongst the shareholders rather than making one merchant lose all his fortune on one ship going down, etc. So, these kind of things, the insurance market, these things have made such a difference to Britain's development, and indeed other countries now, and they've adopted and improved on our ideas, and they've scaled them up in a way that we simply no longer do. Victorians weren't scared. The people that started the Industrial Revolution in the north of England, they weren't scared of taking things worldwide. for some reason, we've stopped doing that. And I think a lot of the time, government policy is getting in the way and just making it more attractive to take your money somewhere else.
No, I think,
as soon as you've got a few large businesses leading a market globally, I mean, look at places like Rolls-Royce. Rolls-Royce has had its difficulties during lockdown, but that so many companies live off Rolls-Royce's marketplace, and Rolls-Royce takes those companies' products all over the world. That's why we need Rolls-Royces, but Rolls-Royce needs smaller businesses who are specialized in particular parts of an engine or something of their products. And it's the same. We need a number of Rolls-Royces. We can't just exist on a bunch of bankers sort of taking 5% or whatever all the way through on other people's money. Because I mean, London is basically the banking center of Europe by a long way. Even while we're outside the European Union.
Even though geographically you are in Oxford with all its incredible history, and the thing is, you've just been talking about history, and of course there'd be history being taught in Oxford, and needs to be taught about our wonderful past and the innovation of it. And as you touched on, the Industrial Revolution, and this is profoundly important. So you really want to push that whole innovation, the innovation ethos, and it's sadly, as you've said, it's been there it is working out where sadly businesses have been shutting down in your city.
Well, these are more of the sort of shops and delicatessen-y, foodie kind of things. I think you probably know the covered markets character, and the kind of restaurants and pubby things. But the science park stuff is all capable of being scaled up in a big way. And once there's people with good paying jobs around, then all those other businesses that we used to have in places like the covered market can thrive. We can have slightly more expensive food if we can afford it, but there are many other people who have got very expensive housing, really struggling. I have a number of friends who work in a charity called Christians Against Poverty, and they are utterly overwhelmed with people who are struggling with their money at the moment. Wow. And unfortunately, if you don't deal with your debts the right way, then you get into deeper and deeper trouble very quickly. And it's very stressful wondering whether every brown letter is a court order or another bailiff coming or whatever. It's very difficult.
And this, as you said, is the reality of some people's lives. James, before we end, and thank you for your time. I'm just wondering good opportunity for you to give out your contact details, where people can find you. And again, just to remind people that if they want to come and help you, get in contact.
Yes. Well, we're going to be increasingly distributing leaflets. We're going to have some street stalls. So come find us in the middle of town. We'll be in the Market Square in Abingdon, and we'll also be probably in Botley, in that little shopping centre. I've got to find someone to ask permission from, of course. But the best way is really to get in touch with us through my email, and that's Oxford West and Abingdon @reformuk.com, and I'll give you that so that you can put it in the description.
I will do. James, I just want to thank you. Is there anything else you want to say? Do you feel as though you've covered all bases, sir?
Well, just one final sign-off thing, I think. If you want things to carry on as before, vote Labour, vote Conservative, or vote Liberal Democrat. It doesn't matter. You can just carry on and things will just generally drift downwards. If you want to have a real change, then vote Reform. We've got a very ambitious programme of changes and reforms where we think the government needs and the laws need changing in order to help the economy thrive and help everybody thrive. So thank you, Mark.
No, not at all. And thank you, James. I'm just gonna play us out and stay with me, and I'll officially say goodbye to you on on the other side. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.